Awesome. So if you weren't sure, that was actually a sped up version of Lara's tiny house getting built, yeah? Is that right? One of them. And so it's not that hard. Couple of minutes, you're done. Takes you longer to talk about it than actually doing it by the look of that video, Lara. It's only because they designed and thought about their brief. I like how architects give themselves a brief. That is good. Yeah, it's good. What are we doing today? The brief is this. I like it. Hey, thanks for sticking around. Again, if you're sort of sitting just on the edge of a row and you're here for this whole session, do you mind just moving in a bit? So if people come in late, they can actually get to a seat a little bit easier, please. That would just be really helpful. Again, I'm going to hand over to Rikki again in a second just to moderate this panel discussion. There might be one more person coming, I'm not sure. So we just put out that seat for the mystery guest. If you haven't been to one of the panel discussions previously, 2 microphones, one here and one over there. If you come down, just stand behind the microphone, Rikki will see you. Ask a question, and if you can make your question fairly succinct, it just means that the conversation's better, rather than giving us a long, lovely story about when you were in Venezuela in 1972. So if you can grab a question, that would be great. Rikki, it's over to you.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to have a great discussion this afternoon on what does it take to build a tiny house on wheels. I'm sure everybody's very interested in that. We have, I'm going to introduce you to our panel. They're actually going to introduce themselves. Let us know who they are, where they're from, and what brought them to this space.
Hi, my name's Sallie Francis. I've built a tiny house on a truck with my husband and 2 kids, 4 and 6.
Hello, my name is Neil. I'm from Evolution Tiny Homes. So we've got the tiny house on the front right at display at the moment and building them locally on the Sunshine Coast. That's what brought me to the space.
I'm Kimberley. I'm the partner of Jimmy, and we're building the POLKADOT tiny house, and it's currently under construction, and it's out near the Deadly coffee van, Deadly Espresso coffee van. And it's a tiny house that I designed, and yeah, that's me.
I'm Mel from Tiny Houses Brisbane. I was on the earlier panel for those of you that were here. I'm an advocate for tiny houses, and I live in 22 square metres currently, which I've just expanded from 14 to 22. So, yeah.
Upgrading. Sorry. Upgrading. I just spoke. I'm Lara. We've built a few over the years, starting 3 years ago. With a group of people. I don't build them alone, but it was not a very good introduction. I'm Lara.
She's built...
Yeah.
She's built a lot. So we might just open up for questions. Just out of interest, how many people are in the process of or have built a tiny house on wheels? Okay, quite a few hands going up. And thinking about building a tiny house on wheels. Okay, yep. Okay, let's jump in. Who's got a juicy question? Okay, yep, we've got someone coming up. Hi.
Hi. Can you, is that, you hear me? There we go, yep. Okay. Just in terms of self-sufficiency, I'm curious, how do you have enough roof space to collect water if you are in a position where you can't tie into a reticulated system?
Okay, did everyone hear that question? Yep.
In a tiny house on wheels, you don't actually have enough roof space just on the house alone in most parts of Australia. Maybe some areas of very, very high rainfall. It's about 20 square metres, generally, even with a composting toilet. So you might have to get some water delivered or build a shed and collect some more water. It's just to do with rainfall and roof area. And according to my calculations, which I did quite a while ago, even with a big tank, it's not even about the size of the tank. If you're living there full-time, 2 people with a composting toilet. But of course, there's so many factors about how much you can store, but yeah, you might have to get some more.
I'd like to add something to that. There's technology out there now, and we have 2 of them here, an atmospheric water generator. So we currently have the smaller version of what we have here, and what an atmospheric water generator does is it collects water out of the air, it goes through a filtration system, and then it's able to be it's drinking water. So, so that it kind of means that we don't need to worry too much about having a roof, like a big enough roof to collect water, because we just won't. But yeah, an atmospheric water generator will be able to collect enough water. I think ours holds around 16 litres worth of water, and it collects about that, I think, a day. So and it will also have the ability I can feed into another tank. So if I want to make it, and it'll just keep running until it fills the other tank and then it'll stop. So that's another option for those that are actually on the road in a caravan or in a tiny house that doesn't have enough roof space for rain.
Or really short showers.
Or really short showers.
Every second day.
Yeah, every second day.
Thanks, Kimberley. Have we got another question? Yep.
Hi there. Just probably a pretty general one, just about councils. You know, like what's the Shire think about having if you got a bit of property space, just for electrics and water, or toilets and stuff like that.
Sorry, could you just repeat that first part of the question?
Just pertaining to council, if you got a property with a bit of space for a tiny house that's going to sit there, I suppose like a caravan, I suppose, and just for toilets and electricity, if you haven't got solar, can you hook it up, or what's the go?
Okay. So are you talking about how potentially being off-grid or connecting in with the existing supply? Okay, yep. Lara, did you want to talk about the council's position around the composting toilet in the Brisbane situation?
Yeah, I can talk about a specific case, a specific situation, Brisbane, and composting toilet. The tiny house in Brisbane is plugged in to the hose off the main house. So it's like the garden hose is connects to the house like a caravan would, and the power is off a power point with a 15 amp lead plugged in. So it's not off-grid for power. It is off-grid for waste. It has a composting toilet, a council-approved composting toilet. It meets Australian standards. And we also have the grey water recycling through a system, and it goes subsurface to water the garden. So that deals with our waste water and sewerage. That's one version. There's a whole bunch of versions, and there's a whole bunch of councils, and they all have different takes on how you do it. And there's all different costs associated with being off-grid. You can spend very little on solar, you can spend a heck of a lot on solar. That applies to all the off-grid systems, I think. Depends.
So with there's a project we've been working on in Scenic Rim, and the council requirement for that is a plumbing and drainage permit, particularly for the way the grey water is treated, and then demonstration that you can supply your own electricity. That one has those units are solar powered. Those units actually have like a water bladder at the base, resting between the trailer and then the top of the tiny house. But there is a lot of ways that councils actually, and depending on whether you're actually able to park it there or not, but that was kind of covered in the previous session, but there's other people that you might be able to talk to after this session. Yeah. Okay, yeah, sure. Have we got any other questions around what does it take to build a tiny house on wheels? Sure.
Thanks, panel. I have a question for those who are currently living in a tiny house, and maybe what you describe as the benefits and also the disbenefits of your experiences? Because it's not all rosy, I'm sure. So maybe from your own, maybe Sallie and Mel. Thanks.
Okay, shall we start with benefits first?
I guess the main benefit for us is home ownership. We own our tiny house now. I'm able to measure my daughter's height on the wall of the bathrooms. I don't have rental inspectors that are 19 coming in to check how good my cleaning is. I'm able to pay a nominal amount of rent to the landlord or the person that owns the land, and therefore I've got a head start to set my family up for a to save, to buy our own land. We actually have a chance of doing something as well. That's the main benefits for me.
I think, can I go to the cons?
Sure, that's great.
Getting up in the morning to have a hot shower with your brand new hot water system and finding out it doesn't work and you've got to go to TAFE and your hair's dirty, not fun. Emptying the toilet, really, really not fun. Waking up in the morning, looking out the window, looking at the donkeys and the horses playing and my dog running freely is just amazing. So much freedom. I don't have people living right next door to me that are creating problems or making noise or upsetting me or my environment. It's just so many. There's so many different things, and it's the same as living in a normal environment, but I think that the good stuff is much better in a tiny house because you've chosen it. Like in a rental situation where you're renting a house, you're really limited to what's available at the time. There might only be about 3 houses that are suitable for you, and there's always going to be downsides to that. So in this situation, you really do have more choices to pick a better environment.
One of the things you've got to think about is ventilation. So if you, especially doing cooking, making sure that your range hood vents outdoors and having a strong enough range hood, because once you start cooking and you like to have a nice fry up and doing a curry, those smells will stay inside the tiny house, go in the curtains, go in your clothes and stuff. So having decent ventilation and adding also one in the bathroom, even if you have a decent window or even 2 windows for ventilation, add another extractor fan, just so that it actually come winter time and you have a nice hot steamy shower so that you can get that moisture out. So an extractor fan in the bathroom and a decent range hood that vents outside for the kitchen is very important. And as you have gas appliances or cooker and kitchen and your gas hot water, just make sure that there's a natural air vent at the top of your tiny house, either at either end and at the back of the cooking unit behind, just so that it vents that gas out, and because tiny houses can seal pretty easily, and you don't want that gas trapped there with you inside it.
Any other benefits?
We are no longer living in that tiny house. We were living in it, the 3 of us, for about 1.5 years, my little 2-year-old, and during that 1.5 years, we loved it, especially the time before she was born, because it was just the 2 of us. We loved it. Because it was just the 2 of us. To be honest, we were like pretty busy, so we're out and about enjoying the city, and we were in a beautiful spot where we could explore the local cafes, and we didn't have to ever feel cooped up. We had plenty of people. We really, really, really loved it, and we ended up moving out. The house, we didn't design it for a family, and instead of modifying it, a granny flat came on offer, which is where we're living. It's about 40-something square metres, not including a deck. It's about 45. And it's beautiful because we've expanded, our 2-year-old runs around and has stuff. So I think for the right people at the right time, under the right circumstances, a tiny house is lovely. And yeah, we enjoyed so many aspects of it. We enjoyed having lots of people over and having everyone crowded out on the deck and dining out there. So benefits, that's one. Just the space is your own, and you share your whole home with people that come. Like, they can see our bed. We quite like that. You invite them into your home, and it's not like, oh, here's our formal dining room and our silverware. It's like, This is everything. This is the things we like to look at. These are the pictures we love. And there's our composting toilet, like, go for it. So it's a very kind of, that's what we like, one thing. We love the deck. Downsides, it's a positive and a negative, I think, dealing with your own waste. I think it's just something that's very realistic and humbling to have to clean out your grey water and realise, like, what you produce in your waste. It's satisfying to know that the composting toilet bin is your waste and it's not being flushed out to have to be dealt with by the rest of the world. It's something that you deal with. It's also kind of gross too at times, especially the grey water. Doesn't smell that good. So that's a downside, it's just that. Because I was cleaning it out when I was pregnant last time. It was really, really stinky.
Also, just bring to your attention, Valerie did talk about it before, that in June the Australian Planner is going to be publishing a special edition about tiny houses, and there's articles coming in from academic institutions and practitioners all around Australia, and a lot of those articles talk about the pros and cons, and it really explores different angles about tiny houses, living, community, etc. So you might want to keep that in mind. Have we got any other questions from the floor?
I've got one from here, but I can't get out really. And
Sure.
I've got a bad voice, so I can ask it here. I just want to ask about the compost toilet. I have one, but I live in the country, so I can empty it and go through all that. In Brisbane, you said a compost toilet is allowed. What sort of compost toilet, and where do you dispose of? Oh, thank you. So where do you dispose of the waste in an urban situation?
So we live, Sunshine Coast. Our composting toilet, my husband does all that. It's one of the jobs we split. I just don't do it.
Don't ask questions.
But I guess for us, I don't know whether it should be. For us, it's pretty laid back where we are. He basically goes up the hill a little bit, buries a great big hole, and buries it, and that's what we do. So, yeah.
I was asking about the urban situation, because I do that too in the bush. But you said, I think Lara said in Brisbane,
we have the Nature Loo, Classic 7. We have the Nature. We no longer live there. The Nature Loo, and you have an in-service chamber and an out-of-service chamber. So that when it comes time to take the in-service chamber out, you switch it for the out-of-service chamber, and then you let it sit. And it's meant to sit for, I think, 6 months. You have to look at the manual. I'm pretty sure it's 6 months, in which time it continues to compost. It's got enzymes, and it ventilates, and it continues to compost. And because composting, it's not just the heat from living in Queensland, but it's also the heat generated by the compost itself. It breaks down. It minimises, and it becomes no longer, oh gosh, I can't even remember all the technical terms. Yeah. It becomes okay. It's no longer bad stuff. I wouldn't put it on top of my lettuce, but theoretically, you can put it on top of your lettuce, but I wouldn't. After which that period of time has lapsed, it is safe to then dispose of, however, and according to council as well, and according to the manual of Nature Loo, and all that stuff's online too.
Sorry, thank you. I've had a Nature Loo for about 10 or 12 years too, so I do all that, but I'm just, does the Brisbane Council, for instance, allow you to bury it in your garden, even after the 6 months?
Brisbane City Council came and looked at our setup and scrutinised the systems that we'd used, and they didn't have any issue with the way we'd set it up and how we deal with it according. It's council's approved that system, so that's all I can say. I didn't specifically tell them where I buried it.
Oh, okay, and they didn't ask you because you get, every 6 months is quite often you get quite a build-up of. You need a big garden, for instance.
It took us about a year to fill one bin.
Oh, okay.
And then it composted right down. So The admin's, I don't know. Okay. I don't know, it was fine.
Okay.
It's not too bad and it didn't smell by that time. You just have to change the chambers. You don't do it immediately. You just switch the chambers and then let it process. That's my experience with it.
How do you switch the chambers?
You move one out and put the new bin in. It's got like a lid and a pipe and a vent and a fan, and you have to disconnect pipes and unhook. I need the manual here.
Great, thanks. It was one area that council scrutinised, but we had to provide additional information around the composting toilet, but once they scrutinised it, they were happy with the process. We've got a question over here.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the pros and cons of doing a self-build versus having someone else build it for you, specifically like a tiny house building business, and how that works in the context of Australia as opposed to the US.
Okay.
Well, currently the tiny house movement, it's not exactly regulated. So if you want to have a go at it at the moment, you can, but the problem is, do you have the skill set to build a tiny house? And if you do employ a builder or even a carpenter, there's a lot of differences between building a normal house and building a tiny house. And a lot of, especially with fastening of windows, doing your cyclone rating, especially of your roof, your rafters, having your windows and doors, getting them custom made or getting industry manufactured windows and doors. So there's quite a lot of consideration to take, and especially if you then look at all your plumbing and electrical, because at some point tiny houses are going to be regulated. And if you want a plumber to issue you with a gas certificate, which is quite needed for a normal house or any gas usage, so therefore if you come down 5-10 years down the line, you want to sell your tiny house, are you able to sell it with a gas certificate, an electrical certificate? Are you able to sell something safe? Was it built according to code or according to someone's idea of having a go? So if we have the chance now to put a tiny house movement forward, it's trying to doing it correctly. So trying to put your gas, put your electrical, and adhere to building requirements, just so that you actually, in future time when they do regulate tiny houses, so that you're actually above board and you don't have to go and fix a lot of stuff or have your tiny house declared not fit for purpose.
Also with that is insurance. If you want to get your tiny house insured, you need to have, a lot of them will say, was it built by a registered builder? And if it's not built by a registered builder, you've pretty much got buckleys of getting insurance. So if you want it insured, if a tree's going to flatten your house, you know, you want to know that you're covered for it. So another thought is that you can, if you're an owner builder for your tiny house, just document it, take photos throughout the whole process, and you know, hopefully you've built it as close as you can to code, because that'll factor in at the end of the day if you want to get it insured.
I guess the other thing is too, sometimes getting a builder or getting it built is not always accessible to some people on a budget, so that was certainly the case with us. But you know, knowing that you don't have the skill sets and what questions to ask, and engaging your community and the people that are around you. I was lucky, my ex-boss was a builder and a plumber, my husband's an electrician, his brother was a carpenter, so we could run through, and I had the project management and forecasting type experience as well, and then we went external to get an art worker who was an architect to go over our plans, you know, so we did DIY it, but we knew that we had to build it to code. I mean, we were moving in with a family, so I guess you need to be aware that you have to be safe. You can't just, as much as I would say to the guys that used to die of horror, be like, surely it can't be that hard, we'll just YouTube it and do it. You know, tiling or... So I think, yeah, there's that middle ground. Like, if you're going to DIY it, just engaging the right experts to come in and help you to make sure that your home is safe and you know, has all the things like with the gas, and you can sell it on later.
Hi, do we have another question?
Yeah, I'm curious as to how you get cyclone rating for something that can blow away.
Lara, would you like to respond to that?
The engineers can engineer it down to the trailer. And then, when you get to wherever you want to park it, then that's a matter of getting an engineer to look at it. Yeah, like one way is, you know, soil tests and footings, tied down to footings. So it's sort of two parts. There's the house to the trailer, so that the house doesn't blow off the trailer, the roof doesn't blow off the house, like none of that's going to blow off. But then there's the house to the ground. And into the ground, it depends on how it can be done. There's lots of different approaches, screw piles, mega anchor, concrete footings.
Yeah, a lot of times you have your quite big rings welded onto the corners of the trailer, and then depending also on your council, or if you do your concrete footings, you can do it 600 or 900 deep, and then you can have your tie downs from the tiny house onto your concrete posts down into the ground.
Great. So we're wrapping up now. We've probably got 2 minutes. Okay, Whammy, one more question. No more questions, sorry. But can you just, I'm sorry.
Who's confused?
The question at the back, would you be able to hold that and approach the person that you wanted to ask after this session? So thank you all to the presenters today, the panel members.
Thank you, Rikki. And thank Rikki for her moderation. It's always good to do things in moderation, Rikki, so thank you.